Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day out. So I'm really excited about um, teaching you a little bit, make you understand a little bit of the azaleas, camellias, rhododendrons maintenance and care. I adjusted the class this time a little bit. I put a little bit of the diseases and how to treat them because, our climate is changing. Plants are going to be a little bit more stressed. My assessment from last year drought is that plants are showing a little bit. It's no stress, but they are showing changes because we cut down the water. We have a kind of like dry winter, really. So I want everybody to prepare for that, start thinking or identifying what is the difference between weather changes to diseases and pests, and how to treat them. So I really add that and I put it at the beginning so we all can see a little bit of that, talk a little bit about it. And then the class, because we have 3 different plants, what I did is I selected what I usually do for each. So I have like focal pruning for camellias, and then I have like maintenance for azaleas and how to treat a rhododendron that it has been leggy and leggy or neglected. So hopefully we get a good overall care for the plants. So I am gonna start right now with my slideshow. And sometimes I get in and out of the slideshow because I wanna zoom in things I wanna show you guys. So just bear with me. Sometimes it freezes when I do that and I leave it there for a long time, but it's okay. We are just gonna go with it. So my company is Go with Nature. I have been doing this since 2004. I do a little bit of I do design, installations. I started doing maintenance, but I don't do maintenance anymore. But I do consultations about overall and how you treat your plants and how to prune them so the garden is harmonious and work together. One of the things that I had learned, yeah, it freezes, you see, that's what I said. Okay, so the plant tips. I wanted to put this here because a lot of the times we don't really understand like the overall of the plant. So these are the things that I had actually see happen with plants throughout my experiences. And maybe with that, that is how I relate to my maintenance of my plants. So the blooming time is important because, most of these plants, you actually want them to bloom. So azaleas, they bloom, some of the azaleas can bloom twice a year. So if you have an azalea that you wanna, they bloom twice a year, you don't wanna prune in certain times because you will be cutting the flowers. So it is really important that that's why I put there February to September. So some azaleas just do once a year, some azaleas do twice a year. The rhododendrons, they only do once a year and it goes from April to May. We can see that the rhododendrons were a little bit earlier this year. So that is a sign that we need to keep in mind. It's not like they are stressed or anything, but plants are adjusting. And so we need to adjust with them. Camellias, we have usually 2 types of camellias here. One that is the japonica, and that is the one with the big leaves. And actually is the one that I'm gonna show you examples of how to prune. And then the other one is the sasanqua. This sasanqua has smaller leaves and it's more open. So the japonica is more like it's strong up growth. The sasanqua is actually more arching and more flowing down. So that you can really see the difference in which one it is. And the japonica is midwinter to spring is when they flower. The sasanqua, they flower between mid-fall to early spring. The thing to understand about all these plants is that when a plant flower in February, in April, in March, in January, in February, what is telling us is that the flower bud overwinter in the plant. So you don't want, that is when you don't want to do the pruning. And when I mean overwinter is that the flower bud was produced in fall, sometime in fall, late fall maybe, and then your plant keeps the flower closed all the winter until it open up. So that is a really key thing for you to know. So sometimes people say, you know, my azaleas, they don't produce flowers. They're supposed to be producing flowers twice a year. And maybe the reason is that people is cutting the azaleas in the middle of winter. So that is why it's important to have that kind of like knowledge of when your azaleas will flower and when the bud is produced. So the best time to produce, I put the CAR for Camellias, Azaleas, Rhododendrons, is right after the flowers. And why I put the best time to prune? Okay, so that's a clarification I want to do. You can prune these plants anytime and no wrong is going to happen with them. They will not, you're not going to kill them because you prune them. You can prune them anytime. We say the best time to prune them is just because of the flowering. So we are adjusting what we're pruning with the flowering time. However, if you are doing, when I say you can prune them anytime, one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to do a really strong pruning in winter. Because what happens is if you go and decided, you know what, I need to do a renovation, which means you are really cutting the plant like more than 50%, you could stress the plant with the cold weather and had a lot of dieback, or make your plant sick. So it is really important that you have that in mind. So again, you can prune them anytime. However, in that case, you may lose some of the flowers. The best time to prune is in right after the flowers. So usually the azaleas that they prune, they flower twice. So then I can choose one of the times. Usually I do right after they do the spring flowering, I cut them. And then they will still produce the second flowering and fall. So the key element also for these plants, Camellias, Azaleas, Rhododendrons, is that they develop growth in the old wood. And that's why these plants are actually kind of easy to care for them and to prune them, because you can have the trunk, like the really thick trunk, and they are going to produce shoots from there. So it's really easy to renovate and to keep it small. If they are not being, if they are happy in the place that they are, it's really easy to keep them. Not all the plants do that. So that is a really important, and I'm going to show you how to look for buds and how to identify things in the plant that show you, oh yes, you can cut right here. Anyway, the important thing is that you remember that they will produce growth in any part of the wooded area, even at the bottom of the trunk, if that is as far as you want to go with your tree. Plant needs. One of the things I wanted to say is we know that these plants are they actually like water. Well, I had learned with the drought that these plants are actually pretty tolerant to drought, believe it or not. Established plants are easier. So if you're going to plant right now and then you expect them to be drought tolerant, that doesn't work. But if the plant is already established and it has been there for 10 years, 5 years, they are a little bit more drought tolerant than we think. So the way that you can adjust these plants to be drought tolerant if you need them is you just need to do it little by little. It's not like suddenly you're not going to put water in these plants after you have been putting a lot of water and they're going to survive. It really doesn't work like that, but it works if you start little by little reducing or spacing even more the water times. For pretty much if you water on Monday. Before it was every other day. So now you start doing, well, it's spring, so you are watering maybe twice a week or once a week. So then you can just keep that spring watering throughout the summer and adjust it like that. So just, they actually tolerated the ones that they need different. So usually we dip water for these plants. The only thing that I have learned is the azaleas had a root system that is really it's not deep root system. It's actually pretty hairy. It's not thick root system. It's a bunch of little hairs, and they are really at the surface. So that is the one plant that if you put a little bit of water, every other day, it benefits. The other ones you actually want to put deep water in. Fertilizing, you can do it actually anytime. We talk about dormancy in evergreen plants. In these ones, they do dormancy in the winter. However, the plants are still taking some of the nutrients, and so that is when the water is there for us to not having to add extra water when you fertilize. So you can fertilize anytime. It will not affect the flower production or anything like that. And we talk about the environmental influence versus pests and diseases. So that is something that sometimes confuse people. And they call me and, the plant is looking really bad, and they ask me to prune it to make it better. And it doesn't work like that. You actually want to have a healthy plant for you to be able to prune it and stimulate growth or make it look good. Pruning doesn't help for the health of the plant if the plant is really sick. So we need to figure it out. Is the plant happy in the place it is? Do I need to change something or move the plant around? Is this a disease that is attacking my plant? Or is this just my plant is being weak? And then by then having problems with the environmental changes. So the other plant tip is when I am gonna prune the plant, I try to assess how the plant is doing, the strength, the health. And from then I do my pruning. So I assess this because I know that these plants can take really hard pruning. And I had done that. However, sometimes when people call me and I see that the plant is yellow, it has minimal growth, it actually didn't grow much, it's actually not producing that much flowers, or the growth is really thin, so then I am not gonna go really hard with my pruning because I can actually kill the plant or have some really hard dieback. So I usually assess the plant before I do any pruning, and I will talk to my client about it. So what do I look in the plant? I analyze the foliage, how green it is. So this is the example on the rhododendron. This is an example with a rhododendron. The rhododendron with the flowers picture is the plant that my client asked me to prune. So when I went there, I was like, well, your rhododendron is not looking that great. I am looking at the color of the foliage, and it's kind of like a little bit yellow. I have here the next sample is the foliage. So you can see that the old foliage is green, the new foliage is yellow. That is fine, it's new, it has not hardened. But you can see the abundance of foliage everywhere. If you have just foliage at the tips, this is showing a sign of weakness. I also look at how many shoots it has from the growth last year or this year, the new growth. In this case, we have two. You can have 2-3 shoots in a point. So that will show you how strong the plant is. So in this case, you don't even have that much. You may have just one or nothing. It doesn't look like it has that much of growth. So the other thing is the thickness of the stems. If the stems are really are thinner than a pencil So I am gonna, a pencil thickness, I am gonna say, yeah, this plant is not so thick. I want it to be like thumb thick. I wanted to see the buds. So this picture is showing you few of the buds ready to pop up if I do the pruning. So if I come and cut here, I am gonna have all this growth happening. So before I look at anything, so those are the vegetative buds. So vegetative buds are the buds that develop growth, develop green. The flower buds, they don't develop green, they just develop flowers. So those are the things I'm looking at the plant with rhododendrons, with azaleas, with camellias. So if all of these, so I look at all of these, then if I have any diseases and pests, so then there is another, thing that I need to look up before I do my pruning to assess the strength. Because a plant that is weak are more sensitive to get attacked by pests and diseases. So then, the common pests and diseases that attack the camellias, azaleas, rhododendrons. I am not gonna go in detail, but I want you to remember these names, and I put here what is important. Is a fungus, is a fungus, is a virus, is a bacteria, and that is diseases. So diseases different than pests is that diseases are all the funguses, the bacteria, the viruses. And you need to actually have the right sprayer or a treatment for that. I put here a sunburn that is not a disease, and I will talk a little bit about that. I just want to clarify it right away. And that's why I put it in a little highlighted box, because that is what people get confused a lot. So when you are looking at your plant and your plant is getting any of these diseases, it's good that you actually try to identify, read a little bit about it, because what happens with plant diseases is that they can overlap. And for example, this leaf blight can actually look like sunburn, or this when the leaves get these virus, the yellow mottled leaf virus. If it's exposed to a lot of sun and now we are not putting enough water, they can get sunburn. So people is like, well, yeah, but it's dry. But yeah, we actually have to treat for the virus. Well, I'm gonna take that back because there is nothing we can do if the plant has the virus. But in any case, so that's why I wanted to just kind of put this out there. And I want to talk a little bit about it, just a little bit, just to give you a hint. I'm not gonna go in detail. So the petal blight is something that is really common in camellias. Not all camellias has it. And what happens is the flower start getting these brown spots and becomes really brown and kind of moldy in the plant. When it's a fungus, one of the things that you need to understand is the mechanical, pretty much cleaning and picking up all these things on time is important. So the petal blight is something that happens especially with flowers that are like triple petals, so 2 layers of petals that are really thick. However, there is something that looks pretty similar. That is when the flowers are, old and they just start wilting and getting brown because they are done for the season. So don't confuse those two things. And the way that to differentiate that is how they start molding. And so if it's a petal blight, the one thing that distinguish the normal thing that is happening, that the flower is molding, and the petal blight, the disease, is that the venations are darker. And in the disease, it starts by spots. So if you are seeing spotted sections in your flowers, and your flowers had that venation that is darker, so then that means, yes, you do have the blight. And then what you have to do, the mechanical thing, is pick up all the flowers, clean up the flowers from the ground, and mulch. Put a really big mulch, and then use the sprayer that I'm gonna talk. Some of the sprayers, to prevent, you put it in the flower. To control, you put it in the ground. So it's a drench. It's called a drench. You drench the ground with the sprayer. So that is the petal blight. So the distinction is, one will start with the black spots and the dark veins. The other one is the natural rotting of the flower. It's not a disease. Then we have the leaf blight. Why they are not the same blight? At the beginning, they thought that they were the same blight, but I put it here. This leaf blight is another thing, and is another pathogen, and is a bacteria. With the petal blight, you actually end up drenching also the soil. So these two, you drench the soil with the thing, and in this one, you actually spray the flower if you want, if you need to. The leaf blight usually is kind of like it starts from the ends and goes in, and how you differentiate if it's sunburn to leaf blight. Well, you see if you have any of these things happening in the inside of the plant, where the leaves are not getting any direct sun. So if you are having these brown spots in the inside of the plants where there is no direct sun, that means it's leaf blight. If it's just like that in one section, that most probably will be sunburn. And then the other one is the leaf gall or oedema. See, so this one, okay, so this leaf blight, sorry, I'm gonna go back to this one. This one is especially for camellias. This one is camellias, the leaf blight. Camellias and rhododendrons gets them a lot. No, a lot, sorry. Camellias and rhododendrons gets them. Usually azaleas, they don't get them much. I have not seen them in azaleas. The leaf gall I have seen on all of them, and in all of them are a little bit different. That's why I put these two pictures for the same disease. So this is in a camellia, and you get these spots like somebody just throw dirt in the leaf. And they are actually can be like more rounded, like actually the dirt that you see in the streets in between the concrete. When the concrete expands, they put this black thing. It actually looks like splashes of that. In camellias, it can also look like your new growth is thicker. It looks like a succulent leaf. In camellias, it can look like that. In azaleas, it actually becomes like a gall, like a ball, like a distorted part of the leaf, and it's really swollen. In rhododendrons, I have not seen it much. So it usually affects, I have seen the most in camellias and azaleas. And this one has also that mechanical thing that you want to do pretty much is you want to go and pick up that and remove those leaves as soon as possible. And so one of my keys, if it's a fungus, most probably is going to spray by spores. And one of the things that you want to do to contain that disease, to keep staying living in your garden, is removing and picking up and cleaning and mulching. So as soon as if this is coming out, this is still not spraying. If it becomes white, so then that's the spores going out and spraying all over. So you want to remove some of the leaves. If your oedema is like this, that is not really spraying, and that doesn't actually produce spores for some reason. So this is not something that you have to clean every leaf, but this one is. You can totally see. I have seen it in the garden, and I usually tell my client, the tissue is so different that you can actually pinch it with your nails and get it out, and it breaks easily because it is actually like a succulent texture by then. So, and then the last one is this yellow, I cannot say that word, virus. And in this one, sadly, there is not much that you can do. It's a virus that the plant will have, and the plant just lives with it. Removing the sections that are diseased doesn't help or affect the plant. The only thing that these end up doing is your plant looks a little bit different, and these get susceptible to sunburn. So this I put it here, even though we cannot do anything, just because if your plant has it, is susceptible to sunburn. Now the pests. So the pests that I see more common are thrips. These thrips are affects especially azaleas and rhododendrons. This is like when the thrips are in the worst. If your plant is like that, you do want to start treating this plant. And with the thrips, the treatment is not just one-time treatment, is like you have to do it like for maybe a month, 2 months, according how bad it is. Spraying this plant in a regular basis, so once a week you have to spray it. Hopefully the plants are not getting washed, like you don't want water to wash the sprayer that you're putting on the neem oil. You want the neem oil to stay there for long. And the other hard thing about controlling the thrips is that you actually, to control the thrip, to control any pests, the product had to touch the pest. So you have to actually make sure that all the plant, under the leaves, above the leaves, in the little cracks, you have to put this pesticide. So that's why it is a little bit one of those things that people do it and does really well, and then just goes really bad. Some people use also a product that you put in the soil, and then it will control the plant, supposed to be for a year. Usually they have to put it twice a year. You have to be careful if you're gonna use that. I don't have the product here. It's systemic. It's called a systemic product for the thrips. I don't put it here just because I am really concerned the people live close to the ocean to put these things in the soil. And also, you know, like you don't want to put that in, you know, anything that you can eat. So if you have like a fruit tree or anything like that, you don't want to use systemic products for your plants. If you have the azaleas close to a fruit tree, you don't want to do it. So there is a lot of things that I want people to think about treating these plants. And then the scale. So I have here 3 types of scale. Scale is really common, and I think that my thinking is that we may end up getting a little bit more scale this year than usual, and it's going to be one of the changes, and that's why I try to put all the scales that we have here, and I think we're going to get a little bit more of that white flight, which it looks a little bit like this scale. In any case, these are something that you want to treat. One of the things that the reasons why we open up and keep the plants airy is just to make sure that the scale is not there. The scale has a best friend, and it's the ants. So if the ants are around, scale is a little bit more predominant and difficult to contain. So just be aware of that. So those are the most common diseases and pests. Now, my products. These are the 2 products I use for azaleas and rhododendrons and camellias. So here I put fungicide and bactericide. So all the diseases you can treat with this one. Actually, all of them that I put there. This is a really good product because it's kind of like, that's why it says biofungicide. So it's actually less destructive for nature. There are other products. I didn't put them here because I didn't find a lot of information about them. These ones, they actually treat, so I put it here, they treat the blight, they treat the black spots, they treat molds. So because it's a fungicide, a bactericide, they are also treat the powdery mildews and stuff like that. So this product is really good. I put the concentrate here, so that means you're gonna have to buy the pump. You can get the one that is ready to use. Just follow the instructions. And yeah, I think that you can also do drench, so pretty much put it in the soil with that. So this product I like because they are actually doing like it's a really good product actually. Just be careful, is like use it exactly how they say in the label. And then the neem oil, the neem oil, you can use it for all the pests, and also you can control mildew and rust and stuff like that in your roses or whatever. This is not rose class, but sometimes when you have plants close together, two other plants, they get the same things, black spot, stuff like that. So sorry. So the neem oil, the one thing I want to say on neem oil, is that be aware of the neem oil put in so pretty much anything that say put it in the flowers. So then you have to be careful with the bees. So that is the only thing I'm saying. The neem oil also comes with a lot of repetition. It says fungicide there and miticide, but when I read about it, I realized it's just like use it as an insecticide, and that is the best use for the neem oil. And powdery mildew does it. It is really good for powdery mildew too, but I use this one especially for insecticide. So the one thing is try to be aware of not putting it when the plant is flowering, just because neem oil and bees, and it's still not clear how neem oil affect bees. But in the logic of the bee life, if the bee touch anything and it gets set in their bodies, and if you put it in the flowers or when the plant is flowering and they step on the leaves, so then what happens is the bee is gonna carry with that, and then they get kicked out of their houses. I forgot the name of the thing, but they are not allowed to go back into their hives. So just be aware of that. In any of these cases, I will use these products. I just try to be aware of the bees. And then fertilizers, these are my favorite fertilizers, and they are my favorite because I use them, it works. And you know what? The truth is, you cannot kill your plant and over fertilize with these fertilizers, and that is why I recommend them. Like I had a lot of people put chemical fertilizers, and the plants show that it's too much, especially with acidity. So if you are putting too much acidity in your soil, your leaf is going to start wilting, and you think, oh, I just watered. Well, it was too acid. And it's really easy with non-organic chemical to get it, for that to happen and to unbalance the soil. So these two fertilizers are really, even if you use them in pots, they don't affect the plant. You can even put the whole bag and it will not burn the plant, not the root system, not the plants. So that is a safety thing for me. The only thing is that dogs actually do like it. So you're gonna have to try to protect the dog from eating it. That is the only thing. And I like the down to earth because you can actually read how they made it, the products and everything. So I am loving that. And also you don't use plastic, so that is great. The one thing when you do fertilizing that I will say pots different than soils, put it in the soil, is you want to look at your numbers. So this one is 436. So in this case, you have something for the green growth, something from the flowers, and this one has also a good amount for the micronutrients. So this is the micronutrient. Well, okay, so you have to just be aware of these numbers. And this one is a little bit more acid, so you have the 6 as a nitrogen. So in this case, for example, if I want my azalea to produce, my rhododendron to produce more flowers, I will use this one. If my azalea, camellia, rhododendron is a little bit in the yellow side, I will use this one because the nitrogen is 6, the 4 is the 4 and the 3 is the one that helps for the flower production. So the pruning neglected rhododendrons. So here is what I am, I explained to you. I'm gonna use one of the types, but it goes for every one of the plants. So when this example of the neglected rhododendron I showed you before. So when I am looking at my rhododendron, I assess it. We already talked about assessing it. So the one thing that I'm going to identify the strong stems, and I am going to look in the strong stems. I'm going to look for the buds. So I know, I'm sorry, some of the pictures are really blurry, but they are there. So the buds are there. I have a section of buds here that are showing here. So what I usually do with plants that I have to, so people say, you know, they are not reacting. This plant is strong enough that I can do some pruning, but I don't want to stress it, especially right now that we are not putting a lot of water on them. It produces flowers. It's a good amount. It has foliage. It's not great, but it has some foliage. It's yellow. So, but the buds and the strong canes are telling me, oh, you know, you can do something on this one. So what I did, what I suggest to people is cut half of the strong stems right above, so right above the buds. So in this case, the grouping of buds are here. I'm gonna cut right above the grouping of buds. And this is gonna be done in the whole, so I am gonna go selecting for like half of them throughout the plant. I'm not gonna do half on one section and leave the other section all how it is, because I will unbalance the plant. So what I did is I select this cane, I select this cane, and I select this cane, and I select this cane. And then the rest of the canes, I leave them. And I am leaving, because, and the reason why I'm doing this is because when I cut to these buds, this stem is gonna look like a stick. There is no leaves in this. So what happened is I am stimulating growth, but I leave some of the other ones how they are, tall and everything, because I want my plant to have some greenery to help that plant to regrow. So that is why I select just half of the strongest stems, cut them to the buds. I try to look and see where the buds are. If I don't see any buds, maybe I don't go that deep. Here I can see this picture. I like it because you can see dormant buds. So in the case I don't have these buds, if I have no dormant buds, I can go to it, but then I will not, I will make sure that I have foliage around. So that is the important tip about, you know, trying to reduce your rhododendron to get thicker at the bottom, is that you have to leave some foliage in the plant for it to survive and do good. So that's why the trick is I leave the thinner stems how they are. I don't even cut them or anything. So that the thinner stems are gonna be the ones that are gonna support the thicker ones from to grow. And then I usually, the other thing I do is when the flowers are ready to, they're kind of like drying out and they're not looking so fresh. So right away I deadhead the flowers. And this prevents the plant from producing seeds, and that energy is gonna go into growing. So I do these 4 things when I am pruning the neglected rhododendrons. And then if the plant reacts really good at with the cuts, in 6 months, I will, from that cut I did, I'm gonna see some shoots here already. And so then in 6 months I can come and cut the other ones to a bud or shorter, to a dormant bud or to a visible bud. And like that is how I kind of like keep them. I wait 6 months because it gives the new growth the time to grow, harden, and become strong enough to, the plant becomes strong enough to take the next pruning. So six months is good enough. So now pruning of the focal point camellias. I am explaining it in camellias because it's a plant that is easy to explain, but you can do, if you have a focal point rhododendron, meaning, you know, you are doing kind of like artistic, or you are having, you know, layers, and you are just not doing the regular maintenance, you can do this with camellias, with azaleas, and with rhododendrons, with all of them. All of them, you can generate a structure if you have a big camellia, no? The only ones that is kind of like silly to do are the little compacted azaleas, because they are really compacted and you are not having much of a structure and they don't really grow much. So rather than that, I do have some rhododendrons that are like in a spot that is really visual from the kitchen or at the entry of the house. And we decided to go a little bit more with more aesthetic pruning than just the maintenance pruning. So you are going to follow the same steps for all of them if you are trying to make your plant look like a focal point. So the first thing that you're going to do is look at your structure. And what I mean with the structure is your main scaffold. So in this case, this is my main scaffold, this is another main scaffold, this is another main scaffold, and this is another one. And then I see how they flow. I see if they are like how they are interacting to each other, and what do I need my plant to be. So in this case, I am not reducing the height of the plant, but I want this plant to be open and airy. I don't want to like, maybe this plant is blocking a view. So then in that case, I do want it to be as wide as possible, but I want it to be structurally sound with a beautiful flow. So that is what I will do. I will first look at the plant first. Don't start just cutting to the outer sections of your plant. Just look at the plant for a second and see how your structure is flowing. The first cuts that you are actually going to do is your 3Ds, which in everybody you're going to see that. And in every plant that you're going to prune, you want to start with the 3Ds: dead, disease, and damage, because that is going to tell you how bad your plants are, how much you actually have, and like that, in case that you select to cut something, for the foliage that you are leaving is actually alive or is not diseased. So always start with the 3Ds: dead, disease, and damage. And then you go back to look at your structure again. And because sometimes it's so much that you realize, oh my God, I don't even need to do anything. Just removing all that dead. When it's a neglected plant, you're going to have a lot of dead stuff. So you wanted to do that. So then when you are done with that, I selectively prune. And usually I say the 3 C's, with crossing, crowding, and competing, but I decided to not put the 3 C's. But if you remember, the next step is see what you have in the 3 C's: crossing, crowding, and competing. In this case, I say crossing, growing inwards, or parallel. So in this case, for example, this will be something that is competing. I have 3 branches here growing towards the same side. I have here something that is crossing. I have here something that is competing. The same thing here, that this one is crowding. So I look at that. So then after that, it's not like I'm gonna go and cut them. I am just gonna see how they relate to each other. So I have 2 branches here, 2 things growing at the same point, start competing. What do I want to do? So I cut this one or I cut that one. So I decided, well, you know, this one is kind of the main. This one has a lot of more branchlets. So I am going to keep this one and I'm going to cut that one. When I cut that one, I'm cutting this side, I'm cutting this side that is crossing too. So this is the cut I did. So it opened up quite a lot. I start usually with my structural pruning when I am trying to do my focal point pruning, just because that usually end up being removing a lot of branches when you do structural pruning. So then the other one is those 3, you know. So I already have branches growing here. So I am gonna cut the one in the middle, or you could go and cut the ones in, cut these two and leave the one in the middle. It's totally fine. You can actually just cut this one. That's totally fine. With pruning, you have options. You just have to have kind of like a vision of what you want. In this case, I cut the middle one. I decided to go with these two. And so I already did 2 cuts and I solved the crowdedness in this section. So then I have something that is growing up. When the tree has been cut, it's thrown or something, or just the nature of the plant sometimes produce this going up growth in horizontal branching. So not horizontal necessarily, but more like a with an angle branching. You have all this up growth. So what happens is this growth is really strong. So sometimes it weakens the branch, or it just takes over and produce kind of like another little tree there. So sometimes I kind of look for those to see if I need them, and if I don't need them, I cut them. So that is one here that I cut it. You can see the cut here, and now I have more space and flow in this section. And then I go with my little cuts just to clear this section here. So that is one of the things I do with a camellia. And you know, like, you can cut really strong, or you can say, well, you know how many cuts I did? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts, but I cut major structure. So in that case, I say, okay, I let it be. And the reason why I can let it be is because if I am trying to control my plant and I cut 50% of the plant, in 6 months, it's going to be double the size. So we don't want to do that. Also, we want to go easy when we are having, you know, drought. We're putting less water. So this year, my approach towards this year pruning is I'm going to go a little bit easier with my pruning, because I know my plant is not going to react like it used to. So in this case, I'm going to do that and say, okay, it is open and airy enough. This is good. I can do 35% of the plant pruning. So usually I kind of put a budget in my head so I can know when to stop pruning. If I need to reduce this a little bit, you can still do that. So this is like example of how do I bring my branches back. So in this case, when I am reducing, I try to, instead of just cutting to whatever, I try to always cut to something. I can cut to a branch, or I can cut, usually you cut to a branch. So if I had to reduce a little bit more this tree, let's say, like make it smaller, so then I start looking for branches to cut to. So I will remove here, and then you can cut here, or you can cut here, and then like that you start cutting. If this needs to be bring back, that's how you do. So you look at your secondary branches and see where you can reduce it. And the important thing about cutting to a branch is that it's going to look natural still. You can also direct the growth. So you are telling the plant, yeah, grow this way, or grow up, or grow down, grow left, or grow right. And the plant is going to do that. So right now, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to show a little bit of how this will work in the real life, not with the drawings. So here is my plant. Well, I don't know if you guys can see it, but these are branches. But we're gonna see how I will reduce this plant. So I'm looking at my structure. The plant is pretty open, so I'm gonna talk like if this is a tree. The plant is really open, and I'm gonna start cutting all the dead first, so it doesn't have much dead. Has a little bit, and cleaning out the dead is good, because like that you don't have open wounds for the disease to come in. So then I'm going to look at the plant. I'm going to say, okay, how much? Let's say that I need to reduce this plant. So I am going to see which one are the lower sections of the plant. So in this case, this is one of the lower at the top. Lower at the top, I'm going to look. So we are reducing this plant because this plant is really leggy. All my growth is at the top. I don't have nothing at the bottom. well, no branches. I have leaves, which is a good thing that I have the leaves. Sometimes I don't even have the leaves. So in this case, I say, well, you know what? My clients say, go as low as you can. And I'm like, okay. The plant is strong. The plant has a really nice green color. So this plant is really strong. The flowers are nice. They don't have any disease or pests. Some of the ones here are yellow, but it's the natural yellowing of the inside growth in the plant. So I'm not scared. So I decided, okay, so now I'm gonna look at my plant and see how far I can go. So for a camellia, I could go all the way to these leaves here, and this growth. I can go as smaller this one. I don't know if I need to cut my plant that strong, but I can start with maybe reducing at the top. So I'm gonna grab, let's see how I can do it. So I'm gonna come and cut to something, meaning I have this branch here. Wait just a second. I have this branch here and I have 3 branches. So I'm gonna come and say, well, I'm gonna cut this one and then I can reduce these 2. And then I did one side. So now this side is matching this section. And then I go and do the same thing with all of them. I know that you cannot see what I'm doing, but you're gonna see the end. So then now I have my plant reduced to a nice height and everything. So I did, it looks natural, it looks like I didn't prune it at all. Why? Because I went and I cut to something. So I'm gonna show you the cuts. I went here and I cut the one that was at the center, growing up, the cut is here. I cut to a leaf when I needed to reduce something. So I have my leaf here and I cut to the leaf. I cut to a leaf here. And so I have my overall and I actually did reduce it like more than, well, I would say almost half. It was here. So that is one of the things that you can do. The other thing that you can do is when you are having like branches, I usually try to, so you can see this branch is kind of flat. I try to, when I have a plant that is a focal point and it's like in front of your window, in front of your path, I try to make these flat branches. And the reason why is because the flowers are gonna be here. This one, the flower was here, and the flower ended up being showing right here in the plant. And I like that. I like when they're flowering that you have like a flat branch with lots of flowers in there, and it looks really pretty. So what I try to do is I try to make these flat branches. So I'm gonna show you how I do these flat branches. So I try to find, well, this one is not the best example for that. So this one is kind of like how they will look. It's semi-flat. So I start again. I'm gonna cut all the dead. All the bad cuts I did before. I'm cutting all that. I'm gonna cut anything that's growing up. And then I decided, well, you know what? I can do this flat branch. I'm gonna cut this one. I don't know if you saw it. So now I have a little bit more flatness on it. And then I can start trimming this so like I shorten it. So at the time that they go and grow, if I shorten up, if I cut right after flowering, so then I leave something like that. When they grow, they're gonna grow here, and then I will have like a whole branch flat in there. So this is what I do. So I do cut them a lot, but again, I am not just, I'm not just going and cutting and leaving stabs and doing stuff like that. I actually try to look for something to cut. Let's say that in this case, this branch is way out there and I want to reduce it. So in this case, I will go and cut actually this one. And the reason why I cut this one is because I have this one. So I can say, okay, well, I can reduce it here. And then I have those two. This is going to shoot out. Most probably this is going to shoot out. And I'm going to have my flat section here. So and you can do that with rhododendrons. Rhododendrons, they have a different growth pattern, but it is pretty, the idea is pretty similar. The one thing I try to do when I'm pruning, and I do it with all of them, is I don't leave these stubs. I don't know if you guys can see it, but they are like things that the plant cannot heal, and they don't close. They are become like dead parts in there. So when you are doing a cut, the one thing that you want to do is do good cuts. So like that, the plant can heal and it doesn't look like it's being cut. So when I cut, I go with my shears straight towards the branch I'm leaving, and I cut with an angle, and I cut as close as possible. So you can see the cut there, and you can see here. So if I'm gonna cut to this branch, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go there. My cut is here. So I don't do this because that doesn't help the plant to heal. So you can see when you do many cuts and you don't cut to nothing, you end up having some dieback, which at the end you don't want. It's gonna make your plant look bad. So you wanna always cut to something. So those are cutting to the branches and those are cutting to the leaves. So it is really important that you do that. And when you do that, you cut it and it doesn't look like you cut. So the only part that I will say that you can cut to nothing is again for that example that I gave you for the rhododendrons, because you can see the buds, and the same thing with the azaleas. Sometimes with the azaleas, you can cut to nothing and they will go back. But again, if you are doing that, don't do, like if I am doing that with the azalea, let's say that this is an azalea. Wait. Let's say that this is an azalea. I'm gonna cut to nothing. So I don't go and cut, because that cut to nothing is gonna die back. I didn't leave any leaves for this branch to grow back and to help feed the plant. So if I am gonna cut to nothing, so then I say, okay, fine. I cut to nothing here and I cut to nothing here, but I'm leaving 3 sets of branches. I can reduce all of them, but I need to leave some foliage for those 2 branches that I cut to nothing to develop. So I have these 2 here. So that is what is important. I'm gonna do that again because that didn't show. So in the case of cutting to nothing, let's say that this is an azalea. Now it's not anymore a camellia, but it's an azalea now. So I am gonna say, okay, well, I want this leggy plant to be shorter. So I can cut to nothing here because I see some buds here. I can cut to nothing here. And maybe I can cut this one to this one. And so I have 2 cuts that I did shorter and to nothing, but I have foliage around. So I can actually cut this one here because I have something to cut to. So I'm gonna cut this one here. And then maybe this one, I just reduce it, or yeah, and I leave it like that. So what I did is I am this cut to nothing in an azalea and a rhododendron and even a camellia. This, well, I don't know if the camellia needs that, but if you have to do that, you just make sure that you have foliage around that support these 2 cuts. So like that, they don't die. So that is that. Okay, so that is the part I was telling you guys that it freezes. Okay, there we go. And then, so that was the camellia, and now we go to the azaleas. So just to let you know, azaleas are actually rhododendrons. So every azalea is a rhododendron, not all rhododendrons are azaleas. So the reason why I'm saying that is because we went through why we can actually cut to nothing with some of the azaleas and rhododendrons, and it's because they're in the same family and they do exactly, they can actually grow from not having a lot of no leaves in the branch. Camellias does that sometimes, but sometimes they just die back. So the one thing that I do with the azaleas is just leave them in the natural shape, unless that you're having like a really nice focal point azalea. I do have some of those. But in general, what I try to do with them is kind of like keep them growing together. Azaleas also had that section that the outer lower branches get to be really strong. So sometimes my azalea looks kind of flat at the top. And so what I try to do is kind of like give them that round shape and make it grow together. So one of the things I do is cut those strong branches in the outer section to make that rounded shape again. I also, if the plant, I want my plant to grow. I want my plant to grow together, open and airy, but at the same time all together. No one section more than the other one. So the other thing I do is I cut some of these branches here, that those shoots that are coming out, so I reduce them. And the reason why I wanted to show you that is because sometimes I reduce them. I usually, not sometimes, but I usually reduce them a little bit lower than the general. So this is the general where all the foliage is. So usually I go a little bit lower. So because if I cut those shoots, you can see that those are the strongest shoots in the plant. So the stronger the shoot is, the stronger the reaction is going to be. So if I come and cut here, right here in the middle, what is going to happen is they're going to produce growth right here. So I didn't make it grow together. So what I do is I go a little bit lower than the foliage, and what is going to happen is this is going to go and grow branches from the point of growth, and then it's going to match up with the other foliage I have. And so that is another thing I do with the azaleas. And if you need to reduce your azalea because it's too big and stuff like that, so then you go back to the principles of the camellia. That is, you know, you look at your structure, you see how your plants are flowing, and you cut the strongest sections to something, to a branchlet and stuff like that. So it's the same principles and the same logic, and it's actually the same logic for every plant. You always want to try to keep looking at your structure, at your main scaffolds, how they're flowing, and instead of doing 3-4 cuts in that main scaffold trying to control it, maybe that main scaffold needs to go. And if you have anything growing around that plant, around that branch, so you can see, oh yeah, when I cut that, there is place for other branches to grow and develop, and there are other branches around supporting that. So that is how I kind of like do my pruning. So I guess we can do a little bit of the Q&A. Yeah. Taylor?
Oh, good. Yes, I'm here. I was looking at the questions and answering some. Yes, so good so far. I really am learning a lot, and I have a bunch of camellias and rhododendrons in my backyard, so I'm definitely going to be putting some of this to use very soon. Yeah, let's start out with maybe some easier questions. We'll go into some other ones, but one at the very beginning is just briefly go over the lighting of where you should be planting or where you should be having these plants, just as a heads up to everyone who's planting maybe a new one this year, as what kind of lighting they should be really looking for.
So I think that in general, camellias, azaleas, and rhododendrons, they kind of take like part shade to full sun. They are also kind of like, even though we usually think in shade plants, I think that they will go from part shade to full sun. Like the camellias, they do like full sun. However, now that we are talking about planting and the water restrictions, I will say that now if you do part sun, that will help the plant a lot, because they're gonna get less water, and that is gonna be easier for them to establish and grow.
Yeah, more sun means more transpiration, so the water leaves it faster. That makes sense. Also, I think if you can relate it to, you're talking about the leaf burn on especially the camellias. I think that's definitely something to think about when you're planting in a full sun area, is the likelihood of that coming or happening.
Yeah.
I definitely, I've seen it on mine in my backyard. I have a large camellia in a very full sun area, and although it does really well, it does get leaf burn on those really hot days in the summer sometimes.
Yeah.
And then another question that came on a little bit earlier on is, can you briefly go over planting camellias and some of these rhododendrons and other things, but mainly the larger ones in containers, and the trials and tribulations with that, and also maybe how to succeed in planting in a container?
Yeah, so with in container planting, so the one thing that I try to make people aware is, when you plant in a container, you are gonna have the soil that you have there is gonna be really light and airy. Sometimes the soil is actually fully dry when you're doing your planting. So you do wanna put a little bit of, like, especially for like camellias and azaleas and rhododendrons, you wanna put a little bit of that compost on it. You can do the grape seed compost that is a little bit more acid. So I try, and you can put the shoot starter for the roots to develop. For the camellias and the rhododendrons, you want to get that root ball really loose. Don't just get it out of the bucket, the potting that they came and planted it, but you actually want to loosen that root system a lot. Not just make the 4 cuts, just loosen the bottom. And the more root bound they are, the more that you want to work that root system. With the azaleas, on the other hand, you do not want to do that. That is the only plant that you want to just get it out of the pot and plant it, because the root system is always so hairy and tiny that they will come out. So when you plant in a pot, actually, when you plant in any of those 2 situations, in a pot or in a soil, you actually want to plant your plant a little bit higher than that soil level. Yeah, like in a mountain, because soil is always gonna go down. So if you have sandy soil, you want to put a lot of compost. So you know that your soil is gonna go down, up to 4 inches. If you are planting in a pot, it will go up to 2 inches down. So plan on that. Also plan in, you are gonna have to add some soil like in few months, like maybe 6 months of a year, because the soil that we are adding to this, when it settles down, when you water, the soil is gonna get washed up. So usually when I do my planting in my deck, in my pots, I do an extra mix and I leave it there. And I know that in a month, I'm gonna have to put more soil and cover those root systems. So that is one of the things I try to do. And the other thing that is funny, just happened, that I'm dealing with a client that the plant gets sunburned easily. The camellia gets sunburned easily, and it is actually a pretty secluded area. So we were trying to see. Then I realized, what they did is they make a hole. They have clay soil, and they make a hole, and they put all good soil. So pretty much what they did is they make a pot. Yeah. So what happened is this plant is actually just growing the root system in that section that they put the good soil, and no, it's not putting root system in the clay. And so you can
almost stops.
Yeah, And you can actually see the root system going up and going on top and going in the pot, because I actually look for it. And it's just actually even circling around. It's not really getting in. And that is why this camellia is a sasanqua, is burning. It's in Novato, which it gets really, really hot, but it burns. She say, like, right in the first heat, it burns. And so when we look at it, so what we were saying is, what we finally concluded is that the water is not being enough water for the plant. And also the water, so pretty much they put the water, but they put it really far away. So where the roots are, what is that pot section that they built? But they didn't build the pot section, that, you know, the good soil. Yeah. The water is a little bit farther. They cannot say, yeah, of course, when we plant, we want to put our irrigation right at the edge of that hole that we make. So what we are telling the roots to do, or the plant to do, is to go out looking for more water. We don't put the water right at the trunk. A lot of people go and put the water right at the trunk. You actually, if my hole is here, I want to put my irrigation right here. So when the water goes, the water fill up this section, but fill up also the other section. And then the root system goes and look for that water. So in this case, it's not happening, because the water is right here. The plant gets the soil here, so little water gets into this section, and that's why it gets sunburned. So few things that we are doing with that plant is we're actually having to do the replanting again, mixing. So when you do planting in the soil, you want to mix whatever soil do you have, sandy clay, extra clay, doesn't matter. You have to mix it with your new soil, your compost, your amendment, and do half and half. And that is how the plant gets in that transition and moves away from that good soil. So, and the other thing that we're doing is, before we plant, we are actually breaking that clay soil, and we are actually putting, getting a tool that you guys have it over there. I forgot to put a drawing here. There is a tool that actually put water right in the root system. Yeah.
Is it the long tube with the holes, the perforated holes? Yeah.
So now we are having not only like water there, but we're actually putting water in that clay soil. So we know that camellias and rhododendrons can actually get the root system in the clay soil, no problem. They don't want to have the root crown, which is the where the trunk meets the roots. That is the root crown. They don't want to have that covered with soil or covered with mulch. But when it comes to root system, the camellias and rhododendrons can actually, all the plants can actually go through and get water from the clay soil. The clay soil is actually really rich in minerals. How do we treat it so the plants can actually get those minerals out of there, and it's just adding water and not making it so damp. So I would say that is kind of like my recommendations. Mix it really well if it's in the soil, in planting in the soil, and if it's in the pot. I don't usually put fertilizers when I do planting in pots, because it can burn the roots, especially like azaleas and stuff like that. I will not do it. And then the shoot started that also they sell it at slots. All these products, by the way, they are sold at slots. So you could plant with that. Helps for the roots to develop. The seaweed fertilizer too. The thing you can put, which is liquid, which it helps a little bit. So that is what I do with the pots. And the potting, and I try to do a little bit of a mix of a potting soil, because it's nice and airy, and then some compost mixed with it, so it gets the acidity that they need.
Yeah. And so you're mentioning that you're going to add in not too much fertilizer when you first plant them. Maybe you're saying some sure start to and get it going, just to help the roots going. I have here the fertilizers you were talking about, the Azalea, Camellia fertilizer from EV Stone and from Down to Earth, both really good stuff. And kind of how you were saying with the watering, you want to kind of put the water around the edges or for the roots to grow into it. Is that kind of how you approach your fertilizing as well? Like how do you actually physically put your fertilizer on your plant?
Yeah, exactly. Because you want to do the fertilizer where the water is, and also like kind of like a guide for people is like, yeah, in my foliage, if this is my plant, so I go with like where the foliage is. So I don't put the fertilizer right next to the plant, unless that is Azalea. Azalea, you can put the fertilizer right next to the plant because the feeders are right there. But with camellias and rhododendrons, you have the structural growth, the structural root system here, but your feeders are at the end. So and that is when you want your fertilizer to be. And when you put the fertilizer, usually what I do is I water, I put the fertilizer, and I water again. So my first watering is making sure that the soil is wet enough that my second water is gonna go in and it's not gonna run off. So a lot of the times, if I have clay soil that has not been watered for a long time, if I put the fertilizer and then I water, my fertilizer just go with the water down the hill or far away. So I usually what I do is I make sure that I water first, put the fertilizer, and then put water again.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, thank you. That's a very helpful tip for a lot of people because sometimes they're a little bit confused about the physical action of putting the fertilizer. They're nervous about it, but just some simple tips really help out.
Yeah, and those two fertilizers, just want to add something. Those two fertilizers, you don't actually have to dig in. They actually like they are really good at if you put them and you just water, they will start decomposing right there. And so if you put them close to your irrigation, they are gonna keep fertilizing your plants. So it's not there is not a lot of digging with this one, especially with the azaleas. You don't want to dig in and try.
You don't want to break the roots too much. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then on the timeline scale, because you were mentioning how you can prune pretty much any time of the year, and you're suggesting maybe after the flowers because that actually helps you see the flowers more often. And it's a little bit good for that. With fertilizing and also planting, do you have certain times of the year that you really want to help, like suggest people to plant and to fertilize? Do you do it around your pruning cycle, or how can you approach that?
So for the fertilizer, I usually like start like I like to fertilize in winter if we have wet weathers, because I just have to put the fertilizer and the rain will do the work. We don't have to add water. And also I already know that my soil is wet, so I know that my plants are getting the stuff. If I have a plant that is like, my fertilizing will be adjusted to other situations. It's according with what the plant needs are. So my plant is getting yellow, so then I start my fertilizing right in spring, because that is when the plant starts growing and getting strong and kind of like waking up for the dormancy, winter dormancy that they go through. So spring is a good time to do it. A lot of people, what I have learned is that a lot of people, because they remember the idea of prune after flowering, like you have your things that helps you to remember. So a lot of people go and right away, fertilize after flowering, and they do it, and it becomes a habit. So I will say, like fertilizing will be something that if you are having problems with flower production, so and it's not because you are pruning your flowers, no? So then you want to fertilizing after flower or any time in summer is really good, because they are going to produce the flower buds in fall. So if you give them that extra nutrients, especially like if you have in a pot, so then that will be a good time to do for flowering production. And you have in slots, they have something that is just for blooms. So it has a little bit of nitrogen, but a lot of the other too. So I think it's called Sure Bloom or Bloom something.
I think it's called Ultra Bloom. Yeah, there's a few different ones, but that's the one.
So that will also help for that. in that section. But in general, yeah. So you can do fertilizing anytime. And but like for nitrogen, if the plant is yellow and stuff like that, go in the spring and start your fertilizing there. The sandy the soil it is, the more like often, I will not say the more fertilizer you have to put, but the more often you have to fertilize. The clayish it is, you don't have to do it as often. And remember that one of the viruses that I show in the slides looks like it's a nitrogen deficiency, but it's a virus. So you wanted to be aware of that. And the difference between nitrogen deficiency and the virus is that the virus will be in one section of the plant, not in all the plant. So you would be like, oh, okay, so this is the virus and I don't need to fertilize it. So yeah, that's my dog. Yeah, so that is how I
approach to fertilizing. No, it's really good. Thank you so much. The one other thing that kind of came up earlier, and I know it's kind of hard to give a best answer for this because I think a lot of the sprays and some of the chemicals that we use, which we tend to go more organic in our stores, we have like the neem oils and stuff that are definitely for organic gardening and not too dangerous, but there are some that are, people don't want to use as much. What are some tips for protecting against, especially diseases, but other kinds of stuff and pests that are not chemical based, but just like the physical stuff that you can do to help prevent that?
Yeah, so that's what we call mechanical approaches. So a lot of the times, that's why I was kind of like identify if it's a pest or a disease. The other one is identify if it's a fungus or a bacteria. Why? Because the fungus generates spores and that is how they spread. And so your mechanical goes to removing that. If it's a bacteria, you don't have to do mechanical because it's a bacteria. It's inside your plant. So understanding that is really important. And then when I do, like for example, for the blights that you have to pick up the flower and all that, you don't wanna put any pesticides. What I usually do is I'm not telling my client, go and pick up every flower every time you see one. I say, there is a time where it's gonna show. And if your plant is really, really sick, a lot of the times what I do is I do my pruning right at the flowering time. So I'm removing all this disease right away. So one of the things that you can do is that we had done it with one camellia. We did it for 3 years, and now the camellia is not anymore diseased. And so she doesn't have to worry about that. And then the other thing is, if you said, well, I could just let the flowers drop, let the disease be in the ground, and then you come and put, and then just clean up at the end of the winter, just clean up all your disease, and then put 3 layers of mulch on that. So then you are having those spores down there in the soil. Is not going to affect any of the part of the plant.
They're not going to come up as much and be on the leaves.
Yeah, because you are putting a thick layer of mulch. So if it's really thin, they may with the wind and with the soil, or if you just leave it there open and exposed, so then your spores may just go all over. But if you put a really thick layer of mulch, so then it's a little bit less hard work physically to start picking up every flower. I just do it once a year. I go and pick up everything, dispose that, in the green can. Don't put it in your compost, and then just put a big layer of mulch and do your pruning. And then so you are like removing everything out of the plant. Yeah.
Very nice. I know we're coming to the end. I could keep on asking you questions for a while. I'm going to ask you at least 1 or 2 more, but we'll end it very soon. Something that you were doing when you were pruning is you had parts of the prune when you had the branching, and then there was sticks that were sticking out, and you're saying to remove them and cut them closer. Is it something that you cut farther away first and then you come back and cut closer, or should you cut closer in from the very beginning? And also, what's the damage of cutting too close? Because I know that's also a problem that people can have.
Oh yeah. So you mean when I am cutting, when I am doing my cuts, how close I need to be to?
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes the initial cut might be a little bit rough and has a space, And then do you come back and cut closer, or do you try and always cut on a very close, same distance from the branch point?
Yeah. So, well, I will say I kind of like, I try to do my best to do one cut. You know, I'm on the lazy attitude of doing once and do it right.
Yeah.
So I try to do it. I know that sometimes putting the shears in the right place to do the right cut is really difficult. So I will say, you know, like if you're a beginner, you're trying, you know, even like I realized that, you know, like it's just doing the shears, I can cut even like thicker pieces because you get used to. So remember, pruning, like in any other thing about studying, this is just out of practice. The practice makes the master. So try to go close, try to go at an angle, and you can always, the one thing, the good thing about this is you can always clean your cut. If you go too far away, you can always clean your cut. But when you go too deep, so then there's nothing you can do, you know? So what I will say is if you are not sure, cut. So if I'm not sure how far I need to go, I cut as close as I want. So for example, in this case, this is as close as I think I should go. The plant is gonna tell me actually, because maybe it's gonna have some dieback. When it's not close enough, I have there is some dieback. So then I can come and clean the dieback, and this is as close as I go. So I try to do cuts where my cut, if I look at it like that, is a little bit more rounded. If I go, so you can see here, my cut is a little bit, not round, like a circle, oval, but if I am gonna go, so for this section,
you're looking for it to heal almost in like, or yeah, to heal in like a rounded
so for
form.
example, this was a good cut and it healed. You cannot even see it. So I want to do that. So this is kind of like a rounded, the circle is a little bit rounded. In this case, if I go too deep, if I go too close, my cut is gonna look a little bit like that. So that is a little bit too much. So you can actually see, in this case, you can actually see where your cut should be. That is like right here. And I went too deep with it.
And so being too deep it'll weaken the branch, right? There's not enough support.
Yeah. So again, so in this case, for example, that is a good cut, it's close. You can see there is no like a little bump. So what happens is when it's like that, it's kind of close. D3 doesn't have to, because D3 heals by layers. So if I'm leaving a bump, if I come and cut here and I leave that bump, so then how many layers do I have, the plant has to do to be able to cover that? So there's many layers. But if I go and do this one, so there is gonna be 2-3 layers, and you're gonna see some healing on it. So yeah, that is, but it is okay if you go and cut it and you realize, oh, you know, it's not that close, I can go back and cut it again. And the other important thing is you wanna do clean cuts. Clean cuts means you don't wanna kind of like tear the whole thing apart. Yeah. You don't want to leave stuff like this, you know, like in this case, I leave a piece there. You see how I have a little bit of something here. Those takes a little bit longer. If you have a clean cut, so then they heal faster.
Yeah, very good. I have a couple more specific questions. I wanted to thank everyone for all these really good questions, for good talking points, and especially if you have some more specific ones about your plants. Definitely come into our stores and talk to us. We can give you some good ideas. Also, we have the contact information for Elizabeth and her team, so she can always help you out too, which would be really cool. So definitely some of those. I wanted to at least ask one that I saw earlier on, is someone had flowers coming out that the petals were a lot smaller and they're more pointed compared to what they usually were. They're rounded and a lot larger. And do you know maybe like what's kind of causing flowers to kind of come out a little bit differently, or is it hard to say sometimes?
You know what? I don't know.
Sometimes
that one I have never seen. I'm so sorry, guys. That really I have never seen, and I don't want to just go on, you know. Yeah,
makeup kind of things, but yeah, sometimes you'll, and it's always good to really analyze your plants and look at the differences, because that's some stuff you can learn from it. So I employ everyone to look at those and bring in those questions, because they're interesting ones. But sometimes it's unclear. I didn't really know either. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And also, and if you have a lot of buds on your plant, and sometimes I have people coming in, and maybe it's just not patients, but they're seeing that the buds are just not flowering, or they see buds, but the flowers aren't coming out, or maybe they die off or something like that. Is there a few things that can kind of quickly help out someone with that problem?
Oh yeah. So when the flower bud is closed and it's molding right there, I mean it's getting brown right there, that is a mold, and you want to use the Monterey sprayer for
Is
that.
it disease control, Monterey? Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that you are actually having to put it in the soil for that. And you want to remove those buds, and that you have to pick up all the buds, because again, mold and fungi produces spores, and that is gonna show. So yeah, that it is a disease. If the buds are rotting right there, sometimes water gets into the bud, and cold weather freezes the bud. Yeah, and that happens, that they don't open, they just fall. Sometimes they just fall. That is lack of water. When you have a lot of the buds, but it has to be a lot. So there is natural regulation that all plants do. It's kind of like all the idea of producing flowers is because they're supposed to want to reproduce. So if they are having a stress year, especially some of the times azaleas do that a lot, before they die, they put this super awesome display of flowers, and then they die. So it's kind of like, that is the nature of, we need to propagate, we need to develop in other places, or put seeds somewhere. So that is the natural way. So the weather related problem with bats is that if they, for any reason, it's really unusual, but sometimes they get wet and they froze in there when it's really cold. So that happens, and they're gonna drop, and they drop and they are not brown yet. So that's kind of like the way that you differentiate. The other one is, if you have a lot of them that they drop and they are not brown, and there are a lot of them, that is lack of water. When they stay there and they don't open and they are not brown, they could be lack of water. So that, yeah, because they are kind of like, we are not getting stimulated by this thing.
Okay.
And then the other one is the disease. So in the disease, they just get brown on there.
Thank you. Yeah, very helpful. It's a common question that people have, and that's it's looking at it, analyzing your whole system, your soil, your leaves, sun, as well as giving it some patience and time. Sometimes maybe you're just a little bit early. So really good. All right. Well, I wish I could keep on asking you questions, but I can't hold you for too much longer. I wanted to give just a little heads up again that you will be back. I think it is on March 26th, I believe. March 26th at 10 a.m. You're doing a talk on cutting and pruning of citruses, which is a really popular class, and I suggest everyone to come to that one. Learn a lot more about pruning, and specifically about the citrus plants. And we have a couple ones coming up as well. So definitely check out our Firewise landscaping this coming Wednesday. We also have the veggie planting on the March 19th, and then Mediterranean climate planting on March 23rd. It's all on the website. You had to go there to get to this webinar, so I'm sure you can find it as well. And all these are on our website, slopegardens.com, as well as on our YouTube page. So if you want to see all of our other classes and future ones, definitely go there and check them out, and give us a subscribe and all that kinds of stuff. And I want to also send out some love. We had a lot of people saying thank you and how great this presentation was, Elizabeth. So you did a really good job. Is there an easy way that people can maybe contact you if they want to have your help in their gardens? I know we have your contact information in our store, so you can absolutely call our stores or come in to get that, but maybe a heads up on how they can contact you.
Yeah, so my company name is Go With Nature. So you can go to my website, gowithnature.net, or you can just email me, gowithnature@yahoo.com. For any questions too, I am here, I'm available. Just tell me that you went to my seminar so I don't repeat myself.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. It was such a great day. I'm going to go and check on my Camellia too today. So give me some inspiration. And I hope everyone else has a great rest of your Saturday and enjoy the sun that we have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.